Welcome back to the Newbie Railroad. I got a special issue for you this time. Mostly what I'm doing this week has been working with JMRI. JMRI is a free to download open source software package that does a lot of stuff. And it's primarily composed of two products, Decoder Pro and Panel Pro. And I'm not going to be doing a tutorial on either of those products. There's tons of them out here on the internet you can find. Just go out and do a search. I'll put the text down below for the name of them, but just go into YouTube and type in, beginner guide to or intro to JMRI or to Decoder Pro or programmer Panel Pro or Decoder Pro, and you'll find lots of guides where they go into how to set it up and everything. So the question then was, what do I bring and why am I doing this? And there's a couple. First, let's go with the why am I doing this. There's a couple of things that Decoder Pro is going to let me do that would be kind of cool, and one of them is I can name the turnouts. So on my layout, I've got about 10 different turnouts, and rather than number them, they are numbered, they're programmed 1 through 10, but rather than refer to them on my controller as I want to turn turnout 7, I can say I want to turn, set grain elevator turnout to open, or I want to change turnout switch east to something. I can give them textual names that mean something, and that makes it easier to remember what I'm doing. And also later I have a diagram on the laptop that I can point and click, and I can also be able to program routes. So if I have a particular route that I want to run with a single click, I can have all the turnouts for that route set to be correct for that train and let the train go. So that's one thing, is the switches. And also similarly, I can name functions. So all but one of my current locomotives, my DCC locos, have sound, and they can have up to 29 function values on each one. And there's a couple of function values that are the same across multiple locos. 0 is almost always a headlight, 1 is almost always a bell, 2 is almost always a horn. But all the other sounds vary from model to model, and I have, as I showed, I think it was last week, I showed a piece of paper that I use for each loco to look up what the sound values are. Well, I'll be able to actually name those in the controller and see the name, a descriptive name of what that function is doing, what that sound is, yard noise or whatever. So that's another thing. So I got that, and then on Panel Pro, I can keep a roster. So I'll be able to enter a roster of all my locos, and then I'll be able to program them on the programming track much more easily. You remember in a previous episode where I changed this, I had one loco, Broadway Limited loco, that was too loud. I wanted to make it quieter, and it took me a while. I had to look up, what CV value was the sound one. I think this is the right one, and then I had to look up, okay, it's 128 is max, so let me try 60 or 58 or whatever. I tried it, so I was doing that, and I got to work, but it was kind of hit and miss. With JMRI, I can pick that loco and go to the sound tab and tell it, I want the master volume set at half, or I want whatever, and then push right and have it programming on my programming track, and it'll make programming CVs a lot easier to reference CVs by a label rather than the code number. And so I mentioned that other people have done something similar. What I couldn't find out on the internet was someone who had a video of exactly my setup. In other words, I have Bachmann EZ Track DCC turnouts. I have a Digitrax Zephyr DCS52 as my main controller and providing power to the track. I want to use a Windows laptop running, an old Windows laptop running JMRI. I'm using Engine Driver on which is actually Engine Driver uses JMRI, but I'm using Engine Driver on an Android phone. If you've got an Apple phone, the similar product is called Y-Throttle, but I'm using Engine Driver. And then I also have a Digitrax LNWI as a network, and that's how in the past, I've had my cell phone talk to be a throttle, a controller for my railroad. So those are the things that I haven't seen anybody that had that exact setup, and so that's what I've been spending my week doing, is trying to make that work and those things talk to each other. And I've gotten it mostly to work. There's one thing left, and we'll get to that probably at the end of the video. But whew, that was a lot of stuff. So let's just go ahead and get right into it and get started and go through everything I've got to go through this week. Okay, I'm going to try something new. Okay, first to review what we've done. So my track is currently controlled by the Digitrax Zephyr Express DCS52, and that provides me with the throttle information, and I can control the turnouts. I can control the engine functions, including sound, and I can control one engine at a time. And I can switch back and forth between the engines. And this gives, I think it's 3 amps to my track, which is enough for, I don't know, 3 or 4 trains maybe. On the back of this device, there is the wires that go to the track and the programming track. And then there's 2 LocoNet connectors and a USB connection, which is going to come in important in a little bit. But the LocoNet connections, I've got one currently occupied, and that goes to this Digitrax LNWI that I have, which serves as a network server, Wi-Fi server, and that lets me then connect to it with apps such as Engine Driver on Android, or if you had an Apple, it would be, I think it's called Y-Throttle. This does the same thing, and that lets you control the trains and the switches and stuff from your phone, which is nice. It gives you essentially free throttles. You can just, if you have the phones available. Now, however, it has some limitations, and one of the limitations it has is it won't program the locos on the programming track. You can't program them from that. This connection only handles the throttle and that kind of stuff. It doesn't get into the real detail. So I'm going to try to use this USB port on the back of this to connect a JMRI. So JMRI is a open source software package. This device here actually is using JMRI underneath, and the engine driver and Wi-Fi throttle, those are also using JRMI. But JRMI has also got an entire software package that does tons and tons of stuff. And so I'm going to be trying to use that to wire in an old laptop, and so we'll go into that if I can get it to work. So in order to use JMRI and take full advantage of it, I need to connect a computer to my network, to my LocoNet. And so I have Digitrax, which makes my controller. It has a product they sell called PR3 or PR4, and that's a product that goes in between the computer and your command station or your throttle. Now, as I said, in the DCS52, there's already a USB port in the back. And so what I needed then is a simple printer cable. So this is a USB cable on one side and a regular printer side, is a square USB side, to the other. And that then allows me to connect the computer to, gives me the hardware connection between the computer and the controller. However, you also have to go in and install a driver from Digitrax, and you go to the Digitrax website. And I'll go here in a minute. I'll show you some screens from JMRI help and from Digitrax download and help files, where there's a significant number of steps that you have to go through. This is an old Windows 8 machine, so it isn't really used for much anymore, and it will work fine, I believe, for this. It would be better. It'd be probably easier to have the installation if I had a Windows 10 machine, but this will work. And so what I've done now is I've gone in here and connected that. I've loaded the driver. I've fired up Digitrax. I told Digitrax, Panel Pro in JMRI, that I have what kind of a setup I have. And so now, you should be able to hear this when I just typed in switch 1. Okay, so when I just typed in switch 1, and I'm going to do a thrown and a closed. And I'm just doing that to verify that I am in fact connected, and my computer is now talking to my railroad. Now I can start to take advantage of the things in JRMI. But before I do that, I'll talk a minute about how you get to this step.
So the first thing to do to get JMRI is to go to the JMRI website. It's jmri.org. And this is the home page here that we're looking at. And from here you can get a ton of information and about the product, and also get to where you can actually download it. As I mentioned, Digitrax has drivers, and one of the things you need to do, well, two things. One thing you need to do is you need to download and install a driver for Digitrax. And I think you can use either the PR3 firmware or the PR3, PR4 firmware, and you want to, of course, download the one for your computer, which in my case was Windows 8, and then that would have to be installed. And the installation was not easy, but on the Digitrax website there is a very detailed multi-page instruction for Windows 8, and I assume other things, but Windows 8 in particular, that walked me through everything I had to do step by step to get the driver properly installed in Windows 8. I also had to install Java, so I went out to found Java on an internet website and downloaded and installed Java on my Windows 8 machine. Okay, then back to the JMRI's website. You can go down. You can find the settings you'll need for the DCS52. And this page that we're looking at here has a diagram here that shows what you would do if it was a standalone installation, as a LocalNet server, how you connect it, and how your setup would look. And then if you scroll down, you can find some of the hardware support, and you can also find the settings that you need from inside LocalNet JMRI to get it all set up. You need to have the system connection and the connection station type and stuff all configured correctly as you enter it. But it goes through all of that.
I'm going to wrap things up for this week. We're just showing how far I've gotten. So what I've got here, I don't know if you can even see this, but on the screen I've got a roster, and I've got one of my locos entered as in the roster. And over here, I've got a Y-throttle server running, and it shows that my cell phone is connected. LG phone, Paul, there's the name of my cell phone. My cell phone is connected. Now, that means that when I'm on my Y-throttle, my engine driver throttle here, for example, I changed the function settings in the sound for this diesel, so that the sounds, instead of being like, function 7 or function 8, they've got the actual names, and that means I don't have to look them up on my little paper sheets anymore to find out like which one is the start up and shut down, what are the yard sounds, that kind of stuff. Now the one thing, and I've got it running, so I've got the little guy there. Let's switch this over. So put him in reverse here. There, he's backing up. Okay. And goes forward. So I've got that set up so that that's working. The one thing I haven't done, and I haven't gotten figured out yet, is what I've got. This laptop is connected to our home Wi-Fi network, and so is the cell phone. If I connect I tried this and I haven't gotten to work yet. So if I connect the laptop and the cell phone to my LNWI server or network, then I can't get it. This says it's okay, and this will talk to I can talk to the network through this, but I can't get Engine Driver to see the roster. So what I assume is, I don't know if that's going to work. So when I'm running my railroad, I'm either going to be using the JMRI roster and functions and switches and everything, or I'm going to be using just the remote throttle and my regular throttle. I think the LNWI is limited connection to the local net. So that's as far as I've gotten. But I have gotten the Digitrax Zephyr DCS52 engine driver on a Wi-Fi phone, Decoder Pro and Panel Pro on an old Windows 8 laptop. And I've gotten those three things to talk together to control the railroad and to work on the programming track to change the programs. So that's as far as I've gotten for this week. So wish me luck, and I'll talk to you probably next week. So long from the Newbie Railroad.